right, hello everybody. Hello, welcome to our career panel, 2015 career panel. We are glad you're all here. It's going to be a good time. We just had our business meeting in Studio B and discussed some things about the department, about the program, and now it's our turn to share with you. So we're very glad that you're all here. We are going to follow the format of answering some of the questions that you have already asked. You all had a chance in your classes to write out on the slips of paper some questions that you'd like to have answered. And so now I took those, I conglomerated them down into 3 pages full of questions. So what I'll probably do is ask a couple of questions of the panel from the ones who already submitted. Then I might open it up for a question or two from you guys. If you forgot something that you wanted to write down, you can do that. If not, then we'll move on to some more questions from the predetermined questions, and we'll go through. So I'll try to make sure that I get a variety of questions from different areas, and if you don't hear your question, make sure you come up and talk to us afterwards and maybe get a one-on-one with a few of these people. So, who are these people? What an auspicious looking group, or suspicious looking group, I don't know. Anyway, they're a very good looking group because they represent the music industry in one form or another, or the arts in general. They are all very well ingrained into various fields in the music industry. They represent music business, the technical side, merchandising, manufacturers, and whatnot. So we have a lot of expertise up here. These people are our Commercial Music Advisory Committee. So we don't just have classes and just do what we want to do. What we do is we make sure that our education that we're offering to you is going to be very informative, very recent, and indicative of exactly what's happening in the industry. So one of the ways that we're able to do this is to have these individuals review what we're doing. So we just went over some curriculum, we went over budgets, we went over things, and we talk about trends and what's happening out there so that when we are designing classes and designing degrees and certificates, we're offering you something that will be very, very valuable to you, each and every one of you, as you enter your various niches in the industry. So very important people. So before we even get started, I think we just owe them a round of applause to thank them for their service. All right, so we see some names, but we don't know who you are. So let's just do a real quick down the row who you are and what niche in the music industry do you fit. So we'll just start here with Frank and go down the row.
So I'm Frank Cook. I am the owner of InSource Writing Solutions and Next Point Training. I teach Pro Tools classes here at ARC. A lot of you guys already have met me because you've taken my classes. For those that haven't, I welcome you to come join. I also write the curriculum for the Pro Tools classes for Avid. So I've authored most of the books on the Pro Tools curriculum from the 101 up to the 310M. And that's about it.
My name is Josiah Zamora. I'm a former student here at AR, graduated about 4 years ago. Now I'm basically working in the industry as a architectural AV consultant. I design AV systems for stadiums, theaters, and boardrooms, various entities, whatever the architect wants to design and put AV in it, we can make it happen. So I took that studio project and took it as far as I possibly could, in essence.
My name is Tim Shirk. I am the store manager at the Skips Music in Sacramento. I am a former student here. I hate to admit it, but it was 22 years ago when I actually took these classes. And I've been a store manager at Skips for about 16 of those 22 years.
I'm Mike Solomon. I'm a private attorney. I was legal counsel for Tower Records for about 15 years until 2003. I can probably tell you more about the history of the music business than the future of the music business. Hello, hi. I'm John LeGroux, and I have a company called Millennium Media, And some of you, I think I have some of my gear here, mic preamps, equalizers. Thank you. And also have a software algorithm called Power, P-O-W-R, that we license to just about everybody in the digital workstation business.
Get the hand holding. Hi, my name is Kurt Shearer. I have co-owned Paradise Studios for more decades than I care to admit. And in about 2009, started working here and have been fortunate enough to teach the 3rd and 4th level recording techniques classes. I also do sound design for all the shows here, as well as the Fair Ups Theater Festival. And like Josiah, I'm also in the AV design and integration business. Matter of fact, we've worked on a couple of projects together. So that's how I fill my time.
Hello, my name is Ellen Taylor. I'm the director of California Lawyers for the Arts in Sacramento. We are a nonprofit organization that provides legal and business support to artists and arts organizations, artists of all disciplines, but especially music artists.
I'm Diane Matthews. I'm an attorney. I do medical malpractice and entertainment law, and have since 2000 and before.
Who are you?
I'm the janitor. I have to clean up after this party. I know, I spilled my water already. I'm Eric Chen. I feel old. I founded this program here in 1990, and Merlin followed closely behind me, and I hired him. And he almost didn't get the job. But then they asked me, and I said, no, that's a guy, because I don't want to do all this other work that he's doing now. So we built the program up here. It's almost approaching 30 years. I don't want to admit it, neither does Tim Shirk. Tim was with me in the early 90s, but the program has sustained itself over lots of challenges, and we are here at one of the strongest programs, community college, rivaling a 4-year across the board, across the country, active AES chapter here, Court Academy chapter. It's busy times here, and I also own Creative Music Services, which is triple busy all over the place, and I've got my hands in everything, and right here with Ellen and Michael, we're on the state board for California Lawyers for the Arts, past board member and vice president for Recording Academy chapter, and I'm currently on the board of directors for Focus Entertainment, which is Real Music Live on ABC.
So you see, I wasn't kidding. There's a wide variety of experience here on this panel. So I'm going to start out with a question, which is a loaded question for those oldies in the crowd here. If you were 19 again and giving yourself advice from your current position now, what would it be? Who wants to be 19 again? Not me. So give yourself advice from where you are now. What would you do differently? What would you advise yourself to do? Alan, what would you say?
Well, I have grandchildren, so I know. Go to school, finish your program, work hard, and don't be afraid to put yourself out in the world and do what you believe in. But do finish school, because in this country it's very difficult to get ahead without having some accreditation to show that you have worked and have learned something.
Any other brave souls?
I'll do one. Just one. You got to be diversified. And if I was 19 again, this is the age to be multitasking and diversified, yet you still want to have a specialty. So I'm glad I didn't listen to my music professors when I down in LA, because they said you should just stay and practice piano. And I never listened to them, and they hated me for that. But it's got me to compete in lots of different areas at this stage of the game, as long as my health is good.
Tim?
I would say do whatever it takes to go for it. Don't be I think intimidation sometimes is a factor of you don't want to take a risk because you don't want to look bad or you don't want to look stupid or that thing's beyond me. One thing I would say is, you can't go wrong by going for it. Taking a risk, doing it. You might get a door closed on you, but the one thing I've learned over the years is you have to have a do or die attitude in this to be successful. Just go for it. For every door that closes, another one will open. I guarantee it. So just go for it. Don't be afraid.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's kind of going to be a little weird. Everyone's going to be okay. 19 again, but it really was almost 20 years ago because my reunion's coming up, so I'm not that far removed from it. But if I was looking back at it now, it's a lot like when I would be in Eric's class. He would always say, you got to give 150%. You really just, it's very true also to what Tim said, you really just got to go for it. Don't pay attention to the numbers of what audio is. If people tell you it has to fall under this category or it has to be this type, really do what you believe in and just kind of blaze your own frontier, because we're at a point where it's really about your creativity. And it's a matter of just taking that as far forward as you can, and don't let people tell you that you can't do it. Just keep pushing, because it happens.
And I think that we probably would all agree on the panel here that the time to take risks is before a lot of other people are relying on you. So as you get older, you have families, you have more encumbrances, mortgages, et cetera, and it becomes harder to be able to take that risk. So really, truly, the consequences of taking a risk are probably less at a younger age than when you get older. So this is the time to venture out and try that. That's my little blurb on that as well. Ellen talked about the importance of education, and so what I'd like to ask members of the panel if they'd like to tell us what their formal education was, or at least a few of you, what your formal education was, and did that education prepare you for what you do today? Because these guys are in a formal education experience, and some of them are saying, is this going to even make a difference for me or not? Ellen says it does, so we should believe it anyway, but let's see.
So I can address both those questions quickly. I went K through law school without any breaks. I worked hard, got a good education, and had a lot of fun. Most of that was in Berkeley in the late 60s. Then when I got out, I pursued my profession with passion, and I had a lot of fun, and I still am. So that's my advice. Get a good education now while you're young, and when you get out, pursue what you want to do with passion.
I'd like to take off of that because I landed up in a similar place, but I took a very different path. I was already married and had a child by the time I was 19, and so I simultaneously worked and had a child and took 2 classes sometimes, 3 classes sometimes. It started at the community college, and I took kind of 2 paths. I took the music path, taking some recording classes and nursing classes along the way. And sometimes it took me a really long time to finish the requirements, but along the way it all added up to something. And then once I got an associate's, I had 1.5 associates by the time I went I went to St. Mary's to get my bachelor's degree, but I was actually already 34 by the time I got my bachelor's, when I even started my bachelor's degree. So I've been working as an associate degree nurse for many years, while also sort of on the side doing music business, mostly booking and management and that sort of thing. And then when I went into law school, it was really just an epiphany. I talked that I was going to go to law school for about 10 years before I actually did it. And one day I decided that I was never going to not be a single parent and not have to work. So I called around all the law schools that were ABA accredited and figured out which ones were still taking applications. And I turned in my applications, and I started that fall at McGeorge School of Law, and that's how I ended up in Sacramento. But speaking of ABA schools, you want to figure out a little bit about where you want to go and what kind of education. Look forward and see if you can be efficient about the classes that you take now, especially if you have 2 majors. so that you don't take classes that don't count or don't get you into an accredited school. It's really, sometimes you don't have a choice but to go to an accredited, non-accredited school, but if you have a choice at all, you should take it.
Good advice.
Grab the mic here.
Frank is leaning in.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense, right? You figure out where you're going and you take the classes that'll lead you to where your vision is already focused. In my case, that's not exactly what happened. So I went to college for 10 years. I started off in computer science, did that for 3 years before I realized I was never going to graduate. So I took the next year kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to focus on. I had no idea. And ultimately, I figured out that the quickest way to graduate was to change my major to English. And honestly, that's why I changed my major. So I changed my major to English, and it turned out that I was actually pretty good at writing. You end up doing a lot of writing in the English program. So I fell into a technical writing program while I was doing that, because that's kind of where my interests were. They were kind of drawing me to that. But when I finished all that, I didn't really feel like I had marketable skills, so I just stayed in school. So I continued going to school, and I was also pursuing music at the time, so I took a music minor while I took a graduate program in English. So when I finished all that, of course, I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I just kind of took the first job that came along, and then after that took the second job that came along, and then the third job that came along. And then eventually, all of my interests kind of converged into what I'm doing now. So it kind of, it's weird. You look back at my background and think, what does computer science and technical writing and, you know, all this stuff have to do with one another? Well, they don't really, unless you happen to be writing about music applications that use software and computers. And then they all make sense together.
Excellent. Anybody else?
I'll say one thing. So yeah, I did everything wrong. I did everything backwards. I was a student here a long time ago, went through the music department and GE and all of that. Attempted a 4-year school and went to another music school. I kind of bounced around schools a little bit. Never finished anything. Ended up opening a studio kind of because I knew a couple other people who were kind of going down that path too, and we happened to hit it right, which was a long shot. And we happened to get into some good circles and get involved with some good projects. And at that time, it kind of led to some other things, and it led to a successful studio. So many long shots in a row there. And so for years, I'd never finished any degree. And matter of fact, here's the dirty secret. I started teaching here before I had any real degree at all. And within 3 years, not under 4 years, I had my bachelor's and my master's. And the reason I did that, I didn't know so much about teaching. I mean, I was doing a good job, but I wanted to learn about the teaching process, and I wanted to have more credibility with that. I will say this is echoing what a couple of people here have said. Don't do it that way. It was so hard with everything else going on in life to go back, finish a bachelor's, and complete a master's program. Now's the time to do that stuff. So, you know, I've been, unfortunately, I mean, as a bad example, I've been very lucky with the way things have turned out. But man, do whatever schooling you're going to do now, because it's so much harder to make that work later.
So the question then is, how much schooling? So a lot of students ask the question about the, do I need to go on to get a bachelor's degree, or is an AA or certificate good enough? So I know it's going to vary by field. So let's just do right down the row real quickly. In your field, what is the value of having a bachelor's or greater versus just getting out and doing it with an AA? So let's start with John and work back and forth. I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's so individual. You know, you got to kind of dig deep into your own heart and your mind and your experience and background and goals and dreams, and put that all together and say, what am I doing? I didn't do a lot of that. when I was younger. I jumped around a lot. So I went to JC for 2 or 3 years. I went to Cal Poly for a while. I never graduated. I quit school and went out on my own. I was playing a lot of rock and roll in LA growing up. Very successful, relatively successful. We didn't ever make it big, but we played a lot everywhere. And I tinkered. One of my passions was audio electronics, and so since I was in junior high school, I tinkered and I built things and I experimented, and it all came together eventually. But everyone's got a different path, and I would say most people should start school, stay in school, get a degree, get out, and then do what you want to do. That's my opinion.
Okay, so Tim, representing merchandising and retail.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think and I'm actually opposite of that. I got my AA and then fell into the music retail business and loved it. But then there was there was some opportunity for me at Home Depot, and that's where I really got a really good education as a manager at Home Depot in retail management. But that wasn't my passion. My passion was music. I'm a musician, classical trained violinist and piano player, and that was where my passion was. So opportunity arose for me to come back to run Skips Music, and I just grasped at it because that was where my passion was with the experience that I had gained. And from there, I completely immersed myself in that business and have been there since. So the question on at what level of education do you need to be successful? I mean, really, what defines success is individual, and at what level, it's each person is going to, I agree with everybody here that says that they should get their education because it's vastly important for networking and what you can learn and the tools of the trade. But it's really what you bring to the table with that education is what is going to define your career. So I'm so on the fence in that question because I am absolutely not that guy, but not a moment goes by for me. What you said earlier, with an AA, there's not a moment that goes by that I wish I didn't take that last year of classes that I needed to get my bachelor because it's like a personal achievement. But today, now with my livelihood now with 3 children, and I don't even know how I would take the time to be able to go to school with working 60 hours a week at Skips and doing the other activities I do that's music related and stuff like that to actually go out and get my bachelor's right now. It wouldn't work for me. But if you have the opportunity now, do it because it definitely is. I think it's worth it in the long run.
The degree is more than just a calling card on a resume. That's, I think, what I'm hearing. It is a lot of personal satisfaction. It is growth. It will help you. I think most people will say that while not every class they took directly applied to everything they do in life, it did in some way enhance or give them an experience or a background or knowledge that somehow helped them through life or gave them more perspective in life. So I don't think education is something that most of the people on the panel will ever say was a waste. It is something that is there and it will never be taken away from you, for sure.
I just wanted to give the short answer. Education gives you options. You may think now that you know exactly what you want to do and you don't need to learn math or science or geology or any of the subjects you might be required to learn in a college setting, in 4-year college setting. But the more you know about things that are out there in the world, the more options you have to be creative and to create a life for yourself and a potential family down the road.
Excellent. Okay, so let's open it up for a question from the audience. We were going to have a mic, but there's no center aisle here, so if you have a question, stand up and give it your good loud speaking voice so we can hear what it is. Anybody want to offer questions? Let's get specific. Anybody on the panel you want to address a question to? Stand up and let us hear it.
This is just kind of in general for anyone who wants to call in is anything, but to get into music or just a career in general, what kind of schools would you suggest to look at? Or what universities would you suggest?
The best one that you can get into. And I don't really say that lightly. And the one that is easiest for you to go to, if you have financial packages that are offered to you, then that's great. But not every school is going to offer what lights you up and what you want to do in order to be successful and complete it. Believe me, I started and stopped a few times, especially at the junior college level. You have to be interested in what you're following. So that's really, if you're more specific about it, a technical aspect, then I think maybe some of the other people might address it. But really, the best one that you can get into for what you want to do.
What are you looking at? Is it more of a recording studio aspect, or are you looking more in music business?
Well, personally for me, I'm trying to do both business and recording studio,
Okay.
and just trying to find the best place where I can get best of both worlds.
When I was here, I used to do a lot of work with the Grammy Foundation, and they did a lot of work down in San Francisco. Their facilities are a little dated compared to this place. It's a great program, but San Francisco and Chico are generally the places that you move from here, unless you really wanted to go down to LA, and then you just kind of have to, you have to play in the game there. And there's so many different options, but that really depends on what you want to look at. But as far as most people, I know that, there's a lot of people that I know from the class that moved down to LA, they're doing fine. Some people went to Nashville, so it's really, you kind of have to look, but don't necessarily say it's just this region. There's other big music spots. Nashville was really great for a friend of mine that I know, and then she also was over in London. So it's one of those, you kind of just have to look at what's out there and figure out which one is really going to appeal to you more, and kind of try and focus in a little bit more if it's going to be business or actual recording studio.
Are you thinking of business like as to help you with your recording career, or are you thinking of more like CEO business along with music? So it makes a difference.
Well, I haven't really thought about that. I was kind of thinking whichever
That's-
one I can get.
Yeah, well, that's what you think about is if you someday want to be the CEO of a record label or a manufacturing company or something, then you want to go to the best school you can go to, like Wharton Business School. They're expensive. It's worth it. They walk out making $150,000, $200,000 a year a lot of times. But I would never discourage anybody from taking business all along the way. I think one of the best pre-law majors and best career majors is actually economics, because it tells you how people think and make decisions. So that's again, and I don't mean to say like I knew exactly where I was going, and I bounced around and I took a lot of other things that were just personal interest, and I still do. I think you should always be a lifelong learner. Take a class in whatever's striking your fancy at that moment. But if you figure out kind of what level of business you want to attain, then that might help narrow down the avenues that you want to go. But also the flip side's true. It doesn't mean that if you take business at a more local school that you can't later on add to it or go for some of those bigger jobs, because really experience is the equalizer for no matter where you went to school.
You're getting a lot of core foundation concepts when you're in your educational environment, and then when you get into the workplace, it's how do I really translate what I was taking and the problem solving skills that they were putting us through, and what does that really relate to at my current job? So everything isn't an exact one for one. That's really not how you're always going to find stuff. It's how do I apply similar things that I've done in school towards my current job.
So when you get past the AA degree, also you find that a lot of the colleges will specialize in certain areas on the recording side or the technical side or the film side or the post-production and whatnot. So you kind of have to gear towards that, kind of figure out what thrust you want to aim for at this point, because you're going to choose your college based on that. So Diane said get into the best one that you can. There's also the can I afford it? And the last one is, I'd say the best one that you can afford, that has name recognition within that industry or that niche of the industry. That then becomes a really big calling card. The advice I give my daughters is nobody has ever asked me, where'd you get your bachelor's degree if you have a master's? It's where'd you get your last degree? So save your money on the lower end. If you plan to go further on than that, save your name brand dollars for that terminal degree, whatever the last one you're going to get is. Okay. All right. Any one more question from the audience? Yes, sir. Quentin.
What is the favorite aspect of the field that you
pick your job, what you do, pick it as your passion. And when you picked your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. So you'll go to it, you'll get up, you want to do it, and it's a great thing. It's not something you're not looking forward to.
So John, what kind of thing will you almost burst out giggling because you're so happy something happened that day?
Well,
you figured out a new design of a circuit, or what?
That's exactly right. I have ideas, and I want to make them real. And I don't think I've ever been happier or more excited about doing that than right now. It's almost like a culmination of everything I've done for the last 30 years. And I've been filing patents and provisional patents, and we could really change the face of audio with what we're doing in the next 2 or 3 years. We're calling it a moonshot because
We're going to be asking you about that unless, I didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement, so I'm going to be asking about that soon.
you know, it's a 50-50 thing, but it's exciting. You get up every morning and everybody in the office is on board, and we're, what are we doing on this? Let's get it done.
By the way, it doesn't get any better than that. When you wake up in the morning, you can't wait to get to work. That's pretty cool. How about the rest of you? What floats your boat?
Probably the coolest aspect of what I do is I see and I get a chance to work with aspiring new professionals like yourselves. They come into my shop, they get their degree, or they're in the process of getting their degree, and they're full of life and they have all these ideas and great things that they want to do. And I get a chance to work side by side with these guys who, like I said earlier, don't take a no answer. These guys some of these people that I work with are fearless in what it is that they want to do. And the coolest aspect of what I do is I get a chance to see these people grow. And they move away from doing, that short existence that they have with me, and I get a chance to pass on any kind of wisdom that I can or insight in life or just whatever, just having a good time working with them. And then they come back and see me 5-10 years later, and they're uber successful at what they're doing. And they weren't that individual when they left, but they had some real life experiences that they left. They did some things. They still followed their passion, and they came back, and they're starting to tell success stories. And then they are the peer leader for the next generation. That is probably what is the most inspiring for me, for what I get a chance to do.
So I'll make this brief. A couple of things. I spent many decades every day in the studio. I'm not in the studio as much these days because I'm doing some other things. But when I was in the studio every day, it was tracking a band, doing a mix for that, either tracking the live performance and capturing it correctly so that you were not only technically getting it right, but emotionally getting it right, translating what the band was trying to accomplish. And sometimes you're adding to that. Sometimes you're complementing that by the way you're doing that, the way you're mixing it, the way you're tracking it. And having that actually work and make a musical statement, that's a huge thing. Now, move forward to teaching. I'm not just kissing up here. I love working with Merlin. I love working with John Talbot. And when we get together and put something together in a program and we see it work, and we see see a student relate to it and actually go beyond what they were able to do last week, that's a huge thing. That makes it so much fun to come to work when you see you excelling at this stuff and getting concepts that you didn't know before. That's amazing. And then third, in my other area of life, when I'm designing systems and installing systems, complex AV systems, taking somebody's need and figuring out the solution to make that happen in the simplest way. Complex results with simple input. And actually having that work is a great thing. So the overall comment is I get to do different things depending on what day of the week it is. And that's so cool. I find myself waking up in the morning and going, okay, I'm not teaching today, but I'm doing this, so that's going to be fun. And then the next day, okay, I'm not doing that, but I'm teaching today. That's going to be cool. And so personally, right now, I'm enjoying the variety of it. I'm enjoying being able to do all these different things that are all related, but all are, expressed in very different ways. So I'm having a good time.
I'll take a shot at this. I told you earlier that I'm the director of California Lawyers for the Arts. And I didn't bring quite enough for everybody, but you all have one of these brochures. And it'll give you a lot of detail about California Lawyers for the Arts. But you might wonder, what do we really do? And what do I really do? I manage a lot of different programs. One program is to provide educational workshops for people in the arts. So for example, we might have a workshop on what is copyright. How many people here know about copyright? If you've taken a class with Eric, I know you've probably heard that word, right?
Yes.
And how many people here have ever signed a contract? Do you think in your music career you will have to sign a contract? Yes, you will. And you will learn about contracts in school, but then you can also come to a California Lawyers for the Arts workshop for an hour and a half on contracts in the music business and learn very specific things and have a chance to talk to an experienced attorney like Diane or Michael, who have done millions of contracts probably between you, and really get some tips on what to look out for before you sign a contract. And so that's just one program that we have, our educational workshops. My particular passion and what got me into this particular job was an interest in conflict resolution. And like many people, I had a very ups and downs in my education. I was an English major in undergraduate school, and then didn't go to graduate school for a long time and went back and studied anthropology. Well, believe it or not, anthropology is what got me to this particular job, because I did my field work on conflict resolution in Brooklyn, New York, a conflict between ethnic groups in junior high schools. That's the equivalent of middle school. And that's where my interest in mediation began. And it wasn't until many years later, until moving to Sacramento, that I became a mediator. And then now I run 5 mediation programs. Do you know what mediation is? Anybody? Want to guess? Yes.
Is it being the neutral party between two people having a confrontation?
Thank you. Say it really loud.
Having a mediation between two parties that are having a confrontation.
Right. You are the neutral party between two other parties that are having a conflict. And those two parties could be, for example, 2 band members who aren't getting along. Or it could be a problem with your music studio when they made a mistake on your record and you had to pay them and you didn't like that. It could be a problem with the artist who designed the label for your CD and didn't do it the right way. I mean, there were so many, you could think of a million different conflicts. So my great pleasure in life is when some group of people or 2 people come to us with a conflict and I could help mediate it and they walk out shaking hands. That's the greatest moment for me in my day.
And I'm going to make a plug for you, Ellen, and California Lawyers for the Arts. On Thursday, this 2 days from today, 6:30 at the Crocker Art Museum, they're presenting one of those workshops, how to protect your intellectual property, licensing the digital age. Did you pass those around for everybody?
Yeah, I think everybody.
Take note of that. So there was the reason I say that is there was a number of questions on copyright and protecting your rights and what constitutes your rights. So that would probably be a real good forum for that to answer some of those questions. All right, let's move on and let's go to, John piqued my interest here. So the next big thing, we went from, in the recording field, we went from disc recording to analog to digital. What's next in the recording field? In the business side of things, what's the game changer as it's coming up? So help us out, everybody. What's the game changer in your field? What's happening? Who's first? Who brought the subject up?
All right, with John.
All
Well,
right.
since you brought it up,
There we go.
somebody's got to talk about it. So I can tell you a little bit about some of the stuff that I saw just recently at an event I went to, which was called Avid Connect. So some of you may know Avid has started an association called the Avid Customer Association, or ACA, and every year they do a big event called Avid Connect in Las Vegas. And so they talked a lot at that event about their major initiative right now, which is called Avid Everywhere. The concept behind Avid Everywhere is essentially to be able to share media easily between different platforms at different locations throughout the world, whether they be audio platforms or video platforms or live sound recording platforms or whatever. So at this conference, of course, they talked a lot about that. They talked about the system that they're trying to put together, which would basically connect all these pieces together in a seamless way. The simple way to understand it is sort of all your audio and media assets are stored in the cloud, and they're all tagged with metadata that makes it very easy to search them, locate the resources that you're looking for, share them with the right people at the right time. So that, of course, is going to be big news going forward, cloud-based collaboration and things of that nature. Yes?
So is it like, kind of like with Google Drives, but with music? Sort of, so it's like you're making like whatever you want to show somebody, and then you can share it through emails, basically, or through whatever.
That's the right concept, yeah, just a simplified workflow. So today, it's very common for people who are recording in Pro Tools to share their work using some of those existing cloud-based file sharing. Dropbox is very common. So this is not necessarily a new concept. The part that Avid's doing to sort of make it new is building the tools right into their workstations, right into their audio and video and live sound platforms.
And from a hardware side, it means everything will have an IP address on the hardware side. Everything is going, all media, within 10 years, nothing won't have an IP address. You know, so that's a huge thrust, is away from individual boxes that can't talk to everything connecting and talking and handshaking.
Well, case in point, at New Mesa Verde High School, Performing Arts, we're running, all of the audio is running over Cat 6. So, you know, yeah, audio is, it's simplified. You know, so audio over IP, we talked about it last year, it's continuing to make strides. And they're finding ways to what is the best way to distribute that. Dante's making huge leaps and bounds, still becoming very, you know, formidable in the industry. So things are changing, but yeah, you do see a lot of audio over IP, just based on how far you need to go with your signal chain, and just as far as storing data, that's basically all we're doing is storing data.
Yeah, Dante is the go-to protocol over networking right now, and I think it's going to stick. Avid kind of dropped the ball originally with AVB, and kind of everyone's sort of not doing that now, but everyone's going to Dante. We licensed it 2 years ago, and like 200 licensees now, and growing.
And it has control data on top of it too, so you can.
It does, and there are control standards emerging, like OCA, where you have a console, and the console has its own paradigm for, you know, protocols for operating, and everyone's different, or every DAW is different. OCA kind of brings us all together under a common blanket, so we all do the same things. We achieve different results, but we're all using the same control environment. RTP MIDI, that's probably even better than OCA, or they'll probably come together where everyone knows MIDI. And if you look at Macs and PCs, they have it embedded now. RTP MIDI's embedded in these things. They just work. Plug it in and it works.
Excellent. On the business side, any game changers happening over here? Any case law that suddenly changed the whole field?
Well, maybe you might want to ask Pharrell.
Some blurred lines.
Yeah.
Some blurred lines right there.
See, a little, yeah.
That's a sore subject there, you know. Nobody's even talking about the Funk Brothers and who played the song, you know, or, you know, what's going
Yeah,
on.
I think that to mention any case law or anything would probably take up too much time, but at some point I'd be happy to come back and have maybe even a little workshop to kind of analyze some of those things about how the business and life overlaps with the law, because that's really what happens when you practice law in an industry. You have to know the business and be involved in the business. So it's you can't really look at legal cases in a vacuum so much. But there are some bills that are coming up, and I think there's a hearing on the 27th for for a deal to talk about new payment sources for performers. And then I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie industry has tried for some time now to get incentives to have people keep their productions in the state of California, and there's some money that's being gone after for that. We're going to go on the 27th to try to talk to some people in the legislature about seeing if they can also earmark that money to be eligible for music productions as well as only not just film and television.
Any live sound or merchandising or any other developments that are changing?
Well, gear is cool.
It never changes. Like,
But,
I can't wait for.
In my part of the business, and I think I talked about this actually a little bit last year, and it's still absolutely ever present.
We have a whole new group of folks here
That's
too.
awesome. The biggest thing going on with my part of the business is my biggest competitor at the combo music store is not necessarily the big box music store down the street. I mean, obviously they're a physical competitor, but it's the internet, where most, and this is such a long-winded conversation, but I'll try to make it brief. Most internet, or you can buy most gear at the internet for a lot of times cheaper than what I can sell it at, or even sometimes cheaper than what my cost is because of the relationships being done. Or obviously, if you have, I'll make it real quick. If I have a widget, or if I have a microphone, doesn't matter what it is, and I'm a big box music store that owns 200 music stores throughout the country, and I buy 10,000 of these microphones because I'm going to distribute it through the country. And that microphone, I'm going to get a pretty good deal for whatever manufacturer I get it because I just bought 10,000 of them. Now you have an independent music store that buys that same microphone and they only buy maybe 20 or 200 or whatever it is. Obviously, they're not going to get the same deal. So, because the manufacturer, like, well, I'm going to take care of these people that just spent whatever, they just bought 10,000 of these microphones. We're going to give them a really good deal. Well, the independent music store, what we're competing against is, I want to, from the music shop, we want to be able to give the same kind of deal, but I can't give that same deal to my customer base because the deal that's being thrown at me, hey, can you match this deal? And this is another big thing that's different now. It used to be people would look, they'd have the Mix magazine or Keyboard magazine, that would be the newest thing on where all the new gear is. Now I have people, hey, can you get this gear? Wait, hold on. Can you get that? And it's on your phone, or it's on your laptop, or it's on your iPad, or whatever it is. And I have to say, oh my God, I would love to be able to get that for you, but I can't sell that to you because it's below my cost. And then what do? They go to the internet. Now the big picture of how does that affect everything, especially for the consumer, if enough business is being done on the internet, on music retail or music instruments buying on the internet, the music combo store is going to go away. Where a lot of people, where they're cutting their teeth in the music business, so they get it, they're still learning their trade or whatever. They're a great guitar player, but they're in a band, but they go to work at a music store because they're still learning their trade and they work in this business. But we're going to end up going away because people can just get that that gear cheaper. And when the business becomes when it's all about the overall dollar, we all understand about saving money. But the biggest deal about that is if you get your gear on the internet, who's gonna service that for you when you get to buying? And all of us, any musician here, we all know about trying to talk the 1-800 line at Personas or whatever it is, trying to get some tech support. It's near impossible. It's really, really challenging, as opposed to going to the guy locally that you bought it from that usually has been working on that gear and can give you a pretty quick and simple answer. So the big picture for us is how do we compete against that? And that is a very prevalent thing in our day-to-day business. And there is no easy solution. The only thing that we can, the music retail store can do is really capitalize on what is it that makes us different. And we focus on service. That's really the best thing to do, because you can buy that microphone anywhere, but the only thing that separates you is the person that actually is in front of you that hopefully, if they've done their job right, knows more about this gear than the guy on the phone or on the internet. So that's a big thing right now.
So briefly, 10 years ago, the music business in in America, music sales that is, was about close to $14 billion. Today, it's just over $6 billion. And so what's happened in the last 10 years is that the technology has gone more quickly than the economic model for distributing music. Music is, well, much cheaper. People like it just as much, and people want to make it just as much. So I think there's a huge challenge in making the economic model move along as quickly as the technological innovation. And it's a huge challenge. I still know some people in the record business, and they're pulling their hair out because they're not selling CDs, and even with digital downloads, they're shrinking year after year in the last, say, 3 years. So what's next? It seems to be in the subscription streaming models, but that presents challenges for, not so much for consumers because they like it. It's like radio where you can choose your own music on the radio, but it presents a huge challenge for the artists and the distributors for making money on it. So I don't know, I wish I had the answer. Maybe someone else on the panel can explain how the business model can keep up with the technology.
Well, I'm not sure I can address sales so much, but another opportunity that I think is really up and coming is festivals. There's so many festivals now where it's not just like a traditional concert, and I think there's a lot of work for engineers at those festivals to be able to make some money, not just the traditional sales of music product. I wanted to mention that.
It's everything surrounding the music. It's
Right.
the merchandising and whatever else along.
It's all merchandising and
Yeah.
and marketing and product placement, but even for the individual engineers, I think there's lots of front of the house, back of the house opportunities.
So one
that
of the models
maybe didn't exist for a
Go
while.
One of the models that I've seen crop up, and let's get your opinion on that, is trying to monetize at a higher degree for the downloads, which nobody's selling physical anymore, is high fidelity streaming. So like Jay-Z's Tidal and several others that are out there. Do you think that's a commercially viable option? Are people going to pay extra for the high fidelity? Do they even care? Or is that a non-issue?
Actually, that's really speaks to what's a real problem among probably everybody who's a music aficionado, is that people are used to they're used to listening to what's much poorer quality music than we might have had in our time under different media. So I'm not sure that many people in the public will pay for higher quality. They don't even know what they're missing here.
Let's ask the
LP
audience.
sales are up.
Go ahead. Yeah. So how about in the
From a
audience?
very small base.
How many of you would pay
Yeah,
extra
yeah,
25 or 30% for your downloads if it was high quality, high res, as opposed to lower quality? How many say, no, I'm not going to pay anymore?
Yeah, but I think we're in a little bit in a vacuum here. Go ask at the high school.
But you know what, there's, yeah.
We just
I don't
just
think it'd be a Debbie Downer idea.
we just searched on Nielsen for an hour today on class, and all the figures you said, Michael, are correct. The streaming has gone up only 14%. But if you took I just went online and searched Tidal. Jay-Z already left his own group, and then they started it in March. The guy from Sweden took it over, and he's got a challenge because the people are not going to Tidal right now. It's actually tanked, and he left, and they used big box office superstars, Mickey, and Beyoncé to push that, and it didn't work with the consumers, and so Spotify and Pandora, meanwhile, took the weak spot, and they amped their streaming services up even more and overtook Tidal. And if you go online right now, the hottest news is that Tidal is not the way it was. But if you looked at slumping sales, which we did on Nielsen this morning, the streaming is taking over, yet at the same time, there was a 5% increase in LPs, of a niche market. At the same time, some people sold more CDs in physical retail markets, while some people sold more downloads. But still, the downloads, like you said a couple of minutes ago, are not equating to what you should think that they should equate on Apple. So does it boil down to a quality of what you listen to, the convenience, or the access of your data? I'd go all the way back to here. So you guys do music the old-fashioned way. And why? Because there's only one way to do it. The old-fashioned way. You have to play the instrument. You have to write the song. You have to put it on paper. You have to perform it. You have to sing in front of a microphone. You have to play an instrument. You can't just go like this. And if you did, do you want every song to be like that? There wouldn't be any individualistic quality, and there wouldn't be an issue of excellence. That's why you go to music school, so you become a better player. You don't go to music school so you can play the song as fast as you can and then do a whole bunch more. So you're not necessarily a number maker. You're a quality maker. You're an artistic creator, because music is still an art. It's not a data. It's always going to be an art, and so you guys got to push that. Otherwise, you're going to be data streams, and you're only going to be worth as fast as the download is. And if you're not used to listening to even 16-bit 44 LP quality, you won't know the difference. So why should you pay anything more for it? You're going to lose the value of the art first, rather than the value of the commodity, what it's worth.
Thank you, Reverend Chung. We'll pass the offering plate later. Okay. Let's take a couple questions from the audience again. Who's got one? Corey.
So if a student takes the business side or the recording side, if they decide to jump in the field right away, what are the hours like? Is it like just 9 to 5, 40 hours, a lot of overtime, weekend work? What can you expect them to do?
I heard Tim say something about 60 hours.
Yeah, well, whatever it takes, whatever the job is. I have sound guys that are working on call for me. They work for me maybe 10 hours, but on their own side, they'll take whatever job they can. So sometimes it's a 20-hour week, sometimes it's 5 hours, sometimes it's living and breathing doing live sound or whatever it is until the job gets done. So the only thing I would say is there is no, at least in my exposure to music retail or music business in general, there is no set time. There's no set time where that creativity, that creative spark is going to flare. For me, when I write music, it's 2 in the morning after 3 cups of coffee and the kids are in bed and I have a moment to download it. Wow, it comes to me and I'll work from 2 in the morning to 5 in the morning and I gotta get up for work. But it's whatever it's going to happen. But in live sound, it's wherever it's going to take you. You just basically take the job wherever you can do, and sometimes it'll be a long read, sometimes it'll be a short read. Just take whatever you can get.
When I started, it was really more, part-time, 24 hours a week, and then I quickly turned that into, what's your work ethic? No one's going to really say, hey, here I am, I'm ready to work, and you're ready to go for 40 hours. It's kind of have to prove yourself a little bit, So typically, you just get your foot in the door. Get your foot in the door and work hard. People will notice that stuff, and 20 turns into 40 really fast, really fast. If people see that that's the guy that they want, then you're the guy they want. But if you're slacking and you're not showing up, well, it's pretty obvious your dedication is not there. So when I started, like I said, it was really fast. It was, 24 hours a week, and then, I used to go, okay, how do you get to 40? And you get to 40, and now it's, for my schedule, really, 7:30 to 4:30, because I work in the architectural environment. But then once the kids go to bed, 9 o'clock till maybe 1, you keep pressing, doing whatever you can. It is a non-stop environment. You got to really love what you do, and then it's like what they said, it doesn't become work anymore. It's like when I used to sit and actually start writing music when it happens. It's not like it's work. You can go to work, put everybody to bed, and then you're like, okay, everybody's finally asleep, now I can make music. It's not work, it's what you love doing. So you kind of got to, whatever you do, if you love it, you can do it whenever it is. It doesn't matter if you're hungry. It's no big deal. It's just whatever. I love what I'm doing. So, but it really was. It's typically probably it's a part-time gig, and then you got to work it. You just work it.
You know how that works though too, and again, this is my culture. It starts out at you get the one job, you get the intern or whatever. You have a buddy that went to school with you, and they end up landing a job doing, they're the monitor mix guy at whatever club, and then he asks you, hey, by the way, why don't you come over and help me out on this one gig this week? And you're like, cool. If you come into it like, well, how much are you gonna pay me? absolutely the wrong attitude to have, because when you're first starting out, you grab it, that's any kind of exposure and experience you can get is golden. So you hook up with this guy or whoever it is, and you do that gig with him, and lo and behold, you do a great job, and he says, hey, I'm doing it every Thursday night, can you help me out? Cool. You do it for free, and then before you know it, that guy calls in sick, and the guy that was employing him said, hey, you've been helping this guy out, right? Yeah. Hey, he called in sick, can you help out? Yeah, I'll pay you $50. Boom, great. So then that's a paid gig, and then before you know it, that guy got a gig doing on whatever, he goes on tour, and you just became the house guy. And then that job that was like maybe 6 hours that week, now became, hey, I'm doing it 3 nights a week, that's cool. And then you're networking yourself, and you're getting better at your craft. And then before you know it, you mix sound for this one band that came in that's from Europe. They love you, and they say, hey, we're getting ready to go do a Western United States tour. What are you doing for the next 2 months? Nothing. Great. So you sign up with these guys, and then again, now you're on the road. And then what started as a free part-time gig just became a pseudo career, and now you're a live sound engineer doing work. That's a lot of times how this happens.
You know, I have a friend who's gone on many world tours with the Foo Fighters, and he started by at a different sound company by building the monitor boxes. He was literally hammering them together, and then went to the front of the house, and then ended up working for them. And sometimes he will get a call from people saying, I want to record right now, come down to the studio. But really how it all starts is whatever you're doing. If you're doing a side job, even in a fast food place or whatever you're doing, while you work into the part of the industry that you want to be in, whatever you're doing, give 110% at that thing. Because even if you're taking classes that you don't love, I want to see that you finished what you started if you can, that you show up on time, that you can just give 100% while you're there and stay focused and not make it really obvious that you're just waiting to move on to what you really care about. So sometimes your degree doesn't matter as much as your work ethic.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, I'd say all the time it doesn't matter as much as your work ethic.
Most of the time when we go to the various conventions, and I usually will ask people, what do I need to be teaching my students? And some of the leading engineers in the world will almost always have the skills as second or third on their list. It's usually responsibility. They'll show up on time. They'll actually do something to completion when I give them a job. Oh yeah, then I want them to understand Pro Tools, and I want them to understand this and that. But it's life skills that come in primarily first. So learn those wherever you are, for sure. Most music gigs are not going to be punching a time card. It's just putting in as much as you can and want to put in. If it's not your passion, you won't do it, then you should find something else. Somebody in college gave me a good piece of advice, said, if you can imagine doing anything other than being in music, you should. You gotta like it that much. You gotta love it that much. Another question from the crowd. Yeah.
As far as technologies coming down the road for the tech guys on the board, is there anything that you see that'll make streaming across the country? You know, I am in California, my band is in Colorado, New Jersey. I know there's a couple programs out there that I've tried that just don't stream fast enough. Do you see anything coming down the line that will make that possible?
It's possible now. It's just really a function of bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it now. The guys at Stanford, CCRMA have been doing that for years.
Yeah.
I was putting together a live thing like that around the world, having to figure out latencies, and it was hard. And it's expensive.
Yeah. What brand do you recommend?
I don't know about brands or codecs or whatever is being used to do all that. I think there are services that offer that right now.
Yeah.
We had a guy in San Francisco working on some, I don't know what it was, something movies or ADR, but he would be in LA controlling our mic preamps in San Francisco, doing the job, sitting there virtually. And latency wasn't a big problem. It was like 10 milliseconds or something.
But it does boil down to your bandwidth. It's really your connection and what you're paying for coming into whatever you're setting with your workstation. That's going to have a lot to do with, how fast you're pushing data to and from.
One more question? Yes?
I have a couple of questions. best way? No budget. What's the best way to get their music out there to the masses? And the other question is, as an artist, musician, what should they look for in a manager?
Okay, promotions and getting the word out first, then management.
SoundCloud, Mixcloud, you put your music up there, share it with people, start getting the word out, getting people used to your stuff. You know, there's tons of ways you can share your music. It depends on whether, you know, how much of a, you know, profit are you looking for on, you know, what you're sharing at this time, or are you really just trying to gain a following to where it, you know, translates into your performances, you know what I mean, to where you can actually book a place knowing that people are going to show up because they know that you're actually an artist. So those things happen there. But there's quite a few places, I mean, that you could host your music for free as far as being able to share with people. But, you know, Mixcloud and SoundCloud are definitely one of the, you know, the largest that are out there for sure.
The California Honey Drops started by performing in the BART stations in Oakland. They went on to do quite well.
Yeah, I think performing regularly, performing as often as possible is key. You know, a lot of people that I know who are up and coming artists, that's what they do. They're playing all the time, and they're not expecting to get paid for it. They're just expecting to get exposure and to hand out information about who they are, you know, where you can connect with them on Facebook and Twitter and so forth. Building a following that way, I think, is really, really important.
And please don't hand out any CDs that don't have your contact information on it. I can't, like, half of them at least. It's just ridiculous. I'm sorry, but another way that you can get it. So I would definitely say to try not to get so caught up in the business end of it that you forget to make your best music, because it can be overwhelming to try to become all of those things. And one way that you might get some legal assistance, I'll speak on behalf of California Lawyers for the Arts. In addition to the workshops, they also have legal consultations. If you're a member, I think you pay $35, and you get a half an hour. And so obviously you don't want to, you want to have a pointed question if you can. There's
Student, you get 20.
Oh, if you're a student, you pay 20, so there it is there. And then you can access a lawyer who has experience in whatever your industry is. Sometimes they deal with disputes that are other things like landlord-tenant and other things that can happen to artists in pursuing their business. And kind of know the difference between a manager and a lawyer and somebody who's doing promotion for you. There's sometimes an expectation that one person will do it all, and that may not be their best suited talent. So you want to try to make sure you're using the right people for the right thing. And you're asking about how to find a manager. Probably at your at that level where you have no budget, no anything, it's your biggest fan is probably going to be your first manager. I'm serious. That's and you know, at some point, hopefully you'll grow to an area where you'll still recognize everything that they did, and you might need somebody who's got more connections. But in the beginning, that's oftentimes where you're going to find your manager, and then if you grow to a point where you're ready to go to the next step of professional management, most of the time they'll approach you.
And also, don't forget, you're sitting in a room with a bunch of future managers and promoters right here who are looking for talent to represent and to promote. This is the place to network and to start to make those connections, help each other out.
Absolutely.
And I just have to put in a word, my word of caution for creative people. When somebody asks you to sign away your creative talent, at least take a moment to say, I have to talk to my lawyer and have my lawyer read this agreement. Because you've all heard the stories about famous musicians who just signed a piece of paper and they gave away all their rights to their music. And they didn't even realize they were doing that. And then their manager, and I know Michael knows a lot of these stories, I can tell you. But we get calls in the office from people, usually older musicians, who are not getting their royalties. They know they should be getting their royalties, but they're not getting them because somebody isn't doing the right thing for them. And they have signed a piece of paper giving their rights away to somebody else. So before you sign, no matter how young you are, and I agree that you have to put yourself out there and do everything, but I don't like to see any artists get taken advantage of. And artists are the first people that get asked to give their services for free. So keep that in mind also. Do your work, you want to be seen, you want to be heard, and do everything you can, but don't go so far as that you will always do it for free, and you will always give it away. Try to find that balance, and that's one of the things you'll learn here in school.
I agree with that. You do have value. Don't work for free forever. At some point, if it's good, they tell you it's like a free gig and it doesn't look like it's going to turn out in your head, you think it doesn't turn out, know when to call it. But don't work for free forever. You are worth it, and you just have to keep working at that mentality. And you know you show up every day and you keep working. Eventually, it works out. But you're not just free labor as well. That was one of the things that when I left here, that it was always yes, you do have to do some gigs for free, but at some point you're also worth it too. So, a little bit goes, it just proves that you're at least making your way. But, yeah, like you said, someone might not go, okay, we're going to give you $100 on your first gig, because honestly, we don't even know how it's going to show up. You could be the feedback king, you know what I mean? So, you just never really know. But if it's like one of those, hey, you did a really good job, we didn't get a lot of money, but here's $20, we'll come back next week. You never really know. But if you come out every week and it's been like, okay, I've been here 7 weeks and nothing's happened, that guy's probably getting he's getting free labor. So also know when to call it, so.
Most of the people here in this room will ultimately have a resume put together, fill out a job application, do interviews. So for those of you that have employees, have hired people, have done lots of interviews yourselves, what tips would you give? What are you looking for when you're hiring somebody? What things are either very desirable in an interview or on a job application, or things that you should never put on a job application?
First thing I do is I Google you on Facebook, or I look you up on Facebook. Very first thing I do. Because it just tells me like what your interests are and all kinds of other little things. Before we even set up like the interview process, hey, we got this new guy right here. I'm like, oh, let's see what he's into, That's the very first thing I do, because that's what they did to me. That's just what happens nowadays. They want to know what you do on your private time, because how you show up to the interviews sometimes is kind of different than who you are on the backside, but you don't realize that everything you're putting out there shows that opposite end, so be cautious what you do on social on medias. You just need to be aware of that. But typically that's what most HR companies do. They want to see what your profile is, and they can either Google you or they'll look at you on Facebook. Just plain and simple. So, and Eric said that too, so be careful posting these pictures in the middle of the night, because that's what they're looking at. Oh, okay, no wonder why he was late for work on these days, or, when I did his references, why they said he was a little questionable. But honestly, it's weird how it kind of comes full circle, but that's the reality of it. I mean, they just want to know who you are, and you kind of already tell them, so be careful what you do.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so when I interviewed and hired people, I get a resume, I look at it, I'm looking at, like what kind of education do you have, what kind of jobs have you held in the past, what's your work ethic. But ultimately, as soon as I start talking with an individual, that stuff fades to the background, because it's the enthusiasm that you bring and the focus that you bring that I think really makes a person stand out. So in a job interview, your job is to show how you are relevant to that position. If you're relevant to that position, that's much more important than what's on your resume.
That's absolutely legit too, because I interview a lot of people, and I've interviewed people that are applying for an entry-level position that literally have gotten a PhD in whatever field that they're doing, even somewhat related to music composition, for example. But they come in completely not taking the job seriously. Stats on the resume and what they've done, this guy's pretty amazing. I absolutely need to meet this guy. This guy might be a great member of my team, but they come in, cut off shorts, flip-flops, haven't taken a shower in 2 days, not brushed their teeth, completely would not be somebody that I would want to represent my company. You've got to, when you're applying for any job, whatever, no matter what it is, number one, you have to sell yourself. You have to imagine yourself in the position you're going to, what you're applying for, and take it seriously. Don't take it casually. If you take a job interview or if you take a job casually, there's no incentive for the employer. That's going to come out in the interview, basically. And there's no incentive for me to, or the employer, to want to invest in you if they don't believe that you are going to represent their company in a professional way. So, second, do a little research on the company you're applying for. Internet or whatever. If you're applying for, it's a job that you really want. It's a tech field. It doesn't matter what it is. If you are excited about trying to get a job there, and you know you can present yourself right, be a little educated on the company you're getting ready to go there. I'll tell you, I am absolutely impressed when somebody comes into my shop and knows my history, or not necessarily my history, but I mean like the company's history. Because that means they've already invested their time and energy into my company, or into the company. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can see it's easier for me to see that me in putting energy into this potential employee. Because they've taken time of their own self to educate themselves on what it is that we do. They'll be more educated. They're going to interview better. Yeah, it works. But just take it seriously.
It becomes a two-way interview when you also know your facts. I did that with the company that I'm with now. I kind of looked at the profile of what the company did and what we were doing. So when I was sitting there, he says, well, do you have any questions for me now? You don't go, no, I'm okay, I just want a job. It's something different when you say, well, actually, I was looking at your portfolio, and I noticed that you kind of mentioned that you did this, this, and this. I was really interested in audio-visual, and I'd really like to look at that within the company. That turned into me replacing who we were using on the outside for doing AV. But it was just those little tiny things and that wasn't even the job I was applying for. I just looked at this back end and said, wow, you also do AV, and so I just kind of took the job hoping I would get this, and now it's my bread and butter. So you kind of need to have questions for both sides. In any interview or any meeting that you go to, people will expect that of you. It's not just, oh, I'm here to talk to Dr. V. At the same time, he's going to talk to me. We're going to have this fluid conversation back and forth, but it also depends on how prepared you are when you come here. So like a lot of us, we looked at these questions before we arrived, so we kind of had an idea of what you might be asking, so we could form an idea of how to respond. Same kind of thing you're going to be doing with an employer. Just kind of look at what they're doing, what your job might be, and how you could assist that and try and make it better. That's what an employer is going to look for. How is that guy going to make our life easier here as the family, as the whole? That's what they're looking for.
Another question from the audience. Yes?
How would you say your experience as women in the music industry differs from that of men in terms of reaching your goals and treatment? And what is the most important piece of advice you would have for women who want to be successful in this industry?
I don't think that I've been treated, I mean, obviously I can only say from my perspective, but I've never felt treated any less than a professional in whatever I was in from the time, even 25 years ago when I was taking recording classes, and I was probably one of two women in there, or, teenagers actually by then. I never felt treated any differently because I really think that I was interested in the work. And then later on, in other aspects, when I was a later teen years when I was booking bands in bars, and then later on when I went to law school, I never felt treated any differently because I was a woman. I might have been paid differently, but I wouldn't know that. But I did feel professionally I was treated differently.
Well, I'm not really in the music industry, but I certainly have met a lot of people who are. And I think that there are stories, I think Diane was fortunate, but there are stories where young, especially young women, can be taken advantage of, or people will attempt to take advantage of them in an unprofessional way?
Well, I can
Let's say.
definitely speak to that, and I
Yeah.
wasn't really necessarily going there. I've been at a lot of backstages, and you have to be willing to not allow that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Ever.
That you,
I have lots of friends who are groupies, and they would call me the counselor, because they're just, you just need to have that way about you that you're not willing to go there for any price.
and know who you are, and it goes for young men too, or actually men and women. There are always those predators who are looking to take advantage of you. Maybe you need money, maybe you need a good meal, maybe you need new clothes, whatever, and they're offering to provide. And you have to know yourself and be proud of who you are, and don't do anything that you would later be ashamed about doing because you feel pressured. There's always another way to solve your immediate problem. There always is. There's always somebody out there who will help you, or if you think hard enough, you'll figure it out for yourself. And you never need to let yourself be taken advantage of. Just be strong and forward in any direction.
I just read a survey, I can't remember who commissioned it, but in general music industry is 68% male, 32% female over most categories. So it generally is actually still a male-dominated industry, but that figure has risen considerably in the last decade or two. And I believe that most of us, like in the recording field, the women that are in the field, my goodness, there's a healthy respect for them. So being professional, insisting that you be treated professionally, as long as you're acting professional as well, I think is the key. Because some of the best engineers on that side are women, to be real honest.
Even with like equipment manufacturing, I mean, there's a number of women that are actually heading the larger companies that are out there. So I wouldn't say that there's necessarily you can't go this far. It's how far where are you gonna let yourself stop? Is really what it is now. It's in the arts, everybody. If you're an artist, it seems like most people really kind of foster the arts and they really welcome everything. So it's a matter of what is your dedication. Don't look for somebody as they're trying to stop me. If that's how you feel, then just kind of shoot over here and move. Just keep making your moves. You know what I mean? It'll all make its way. But I don't really see, ceilings or the stuff that I've read and looked at, and when you look across the industry of, who are the major women in the industry making a change as far as even, like I said, equipment manufacturing, like you got Kramer and FSR, those are, female CEOs of those companies. So, it's up to you really where you wanted to go with that.
You should look up Leslie Ann Jones.
Case in point too.
Yeah. Yes. So. Another question, yes. Stand up a little louder, please.
How much exposure would you need as an artist to get good paying gigs for live shows?
You want to make a living?
No, for if you wanted to get paid shows a good amount, how much exposure would you need as an artist to get good paying shows?
What are people willing to pay to see you? I mean, really it boils down to what degree of talent you have to offer them. I think most people are willing. How many people go to shows on a regular basis? Yeah, right? So, and you only go to those shows if you perceive value from the artist giving to you. I think personally that as long as you present a product in the form of your music that they want, they're going to want to come to you. So now what is the vehicle to get yourself out there? That's where the promotion and the other aspects come in. Other ideas, thoughts on that?
Well, it's an interesting question because I'm trying to sort of figure out what you mean by it. So what you said is, what degree of recognition do you need to make good money doing live shows, right?
I guess you could say on the more of the promotion side. That's what I'm talking about.
So
It's hard to measure. It's not a direct equivalent. You do this and you get this, and that's just the way in any business, but it's especially that way in the music business. So sometimes you may have one just particularly well-timed bit of exposure. You meet somebody who takes a liking to you and you hardly have to do a thing and off you go. And other times, people who are quite famous have made very little money.
The answer is there is no real answer. Sorry. Somebody
What
else.
is the meaning of life?
Hey, yeah, welcome to the world. Yeah. Over here, yes, sure.
What was your worst experience with a client or somebody you were recording in the industry?
Do you want names also? What type of experience lends itself to an ill-timed thing?
I had somebody literally light off fireworks next to a $10,000 microphone.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I'm not kidding. On a music stand, I see these blue flashes coming from the live room, and it's in front of a Telefunken 251. And I just about threw myself in front of a bus. But everything was okay. I've had others, but that's just one.
Any other horror stories? We'll talk later. Okay. So, other question. One or two more questions, then we're going to call it a night. Yes, Quentin.
If you could be promoted to any job in the music field right now, what would it be? If you got, like, say you got some big promotion, like you got promoted to a higher position than where you are at right now, what would you want it to be?
So if you're not already in your dream job, what would it be? Kurt, you better say it's teaching here.
Get a job at Sarah College. American. Did I say the wrong college? Or is it Placer High School?
You better retire tomorrow.
I am looking forward to that.
Senile.
Ooh, see, at least I woke you up. Well, you got to go where, if you want to go where money is made, it's got to go where the business is. That's the rule of thumb here. It doesn't necessarily mean you can play music all your life and that's where you're going to move to make the big bucks. So it depends upon your diversity, your background, your timing, your luck, your research, your passion, your interview skills. There's all kinds of things that play into dropping into the spot at the right time. And that's where your diversity also comes in, because it gives you ways to move around. Even if you had to move slightly this way to go that way, you didn't have to move quite that far. So if your goal was to make more money, so it's no different. I don't have my master's here. I could have got my master's and even my doctorate, but I didn't want to. I thought I'd make more money just doing my music, because I'm still actively involved in the music craft business. So I never went back because I didn't want to. Why should I go back when I'm in the business already to get a master's or somebody to tell me how to do the business and I'm already doing the business? It doesn't make any sense. So I'm spending my money listening to some master's thing, talking pidgin English or something. Hello. Today's lesson. So you have to look at where the income and revenue sources and your research, like we've all said, your research tells you what are the trends that are moving of how the business is changing. So if you're going to go into LP making or CDs, dude, I mean, you're like 15 years too late. So you need to go into another business that's offshoot. But if you did the right research and you wanted to know where to go forward, those are benchmarks to give you tangible items to move forward in a very difficult change. And we're still in the business of change. We're not in the business of it's all hunky-dory and we don't have to do anything else. We don't know where everything is going to go, whether it's technology or whether it's craft or whether it's art, or whether it's the economy or the world. There are lots of things that pull on our strings today rather than just, I just want to do music. And so those are the important things in life. And as you get older, you have to look at those, because you can't be 55 years old and there's a bottle of beer in the fridge and that's it. So you got to have, yeah, I have. I don't like that beer either.
So what's more important, satisfaction, money, or being satisfied with the money? I mean, that's really what it is.
So Eric reminded me, I brought this magazine and we could pass it around. It's Sacramento Lawyer, and the cover story is Lawyers Who Rock. And it's about a law firm where everybody in the law firm is a musician, and they play gigs on the weekends. And they're very well known in Sacramento for doing parties and festivals and whatever. They have a fabulous time, but they're lawyers and they're making a lot of money being lawyers and having a lot of fun playing their music. So it's just another approach. If you're interested in money or need money, you can have a job that pays a solid income and still do your art on the side. But that's not what a real artist is really satisfied with. I live with one, so I know. I can pass this around though. This is fun. It's about artists who make art and who are writers, but are also lawyers. I mean lawyers who make art.
Michael's in there,
sorry.
right?
So,
Aren't you in that?
why don't you
Yeah,
pass
he's
that
in
at
there
the
too.
end and the posters?
Promoting.
Michael is
Yeah.
in the book. Michael is a great photographer,
Yeah, I know.
but he's also a lawyer.
Yeah.
It sounds like most people are already doing what they
Because I was
wanna
like,
be
is
doing.
that your dream job? Like, you're talking about it so passionately. It's like, no, I meant my dream job. Stop.
Yeah, so you said if you could get promoted to
The job.
the thing you'd most like to do or something along those lines,
Yeah.
which is really more about passion, I think, than it is about money. Although for most of us, passion and money converge at some point because we're all passionate about money. But nonetheless, you know, we all do what we do, I think, because we love what we're doing. So my answer is probably similar to what most of the people on this panel would say. More of what I'm currently doing is what I'd like to do.
So figure out what you love. What can you not live without doing, and pursue it. And try to find a way to make a living doing that thing. I think that's where we are.
It's also, I think maybe you phrased it wrong. You don't get promoted to do that great thing that you want to do. You make it happen. If it means starting your own business, how many people here started their own business? Right.
Yeah.
Start your own business, or you find the business that you love already and build it.
Well, so like for Frank, if like Logic came up to you and was like, hey, would you help us write the books for this and teach people how to do Logic? Would you say yes? Because it's more of what you're doing, which in a similar fashion but in a different way.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Probably I would.
Or for reason or what have you.
Now, it would depend on what you're offering, right? So I would say, do you want to start a certification program in Logic that can compete with the certification program that we have in Avid? If you want to do that, sign me up. I'm on board. If you just want me to write a book about Logic, probably not, because I'm already doing things that are at a much higher level,
You
so
don't
to
want to
speak.
backstep.
There's a much more broad base for what I'm doing. So it's kind of a matter of, yeah, I would do it, but I would do it if the conditions are right. It has to add to what I'm already doing and not sort of detract from what I'm already doing.
You can be selective.
Exactly.
Well, we've talked a lot about a number of subjects, and we could go on for a long time, but we're going to call it to come to a close at this point. I know some of our panelists need to get out and move on, but a couple of them might be willing to stay around and answer one or two more questions from you individually. I'd encourage you to do that. Let's give our panelists a round of applause for their talk. And I would remind all of my students to sign in on the clipboard at the door if you haven't already done that before you leave, so you prove that you're here. Thank you, everybody. Take care.